The moon had not yet risen, and the night air carried the scent of wet earth and wildflowers. Amina walked barefoot along the winding path that led to the river. Her village was quiet, the fires in most huts dimming to embers, but her heart was restless. There was something about the river that always called her when sleep refused to come. She hummed to herself, a tune she barely remembered, one her mother used to sing when she was still a child. Her voice trembled at first, but as the river came into view, she let the melody grow stronger. The water reflected faint streaks of starlight, shimmering as though spirits danced upon its surface. She knelt at the riverbank, dipped her fingers into the cool water, and began to sing. It was not a song of words, but of longing, of memories buried and desires unnamed. Her voice echoed softly, carried by the gentle rush of the current. Somewhere in the stillness, something stirred. The surface of the water rippled, though there was no wind. The reeds at the edge of the bank swayed as if brushed by invisible hands. Amina closed her eyes, surrendering to the rhythm, never noticing the figure that began to rise from the depths. Tall, cloaked in the shimmer of water itself, he emerged with the silence of a dream. His eyes glowed faintly like polished shells beneath moonlight. The god of the river had heard her. He stood in the shallows watching her, listening as though her voice was the only thing that had mattered for centuries. When Amina finally stopped, the silence felt heavy, charged. She opened her eyes and gasped. The figure was there, half hidden in mist, yet solid and undeniable. Her breath caught in her throat, but fear did not take her. Instead, something deeper, stranger, rooted her in place. The water god tilted his head, as though memorizing her face. His voice was low, like the sound of distant thunder echoing through mountains. "You called me." Amina shook her head, words stumbling. "I did not mean to." His lips curved, not quite a smile. "Songs do not lie. You have sung to me, and I have listened." The air grew cooler, the river darker, though his presence glowed softly against the night. Amina rose to her feet, but her legs trembled. I I should return home." The god stepped closer, the water parting around him like a cloak. "You will return," he said, his voice wrapping around her like a current, "but not alone." Her heart thudded painfully. She turned and hurried back along the path, the night suddenly alive with whispers in the trees. Yet when she reached the edge of her village, she felt it, the weight of something following her. She glanced back, and though the path was empty, she knew the water god was near. Her hut stood quiet, its roof low and familiar, a place of comfort. She slipped inside, closing the woven mat door behind her. The small space smelled of herbs, smoke, and earth. She pressed her back to the wall, her hands trembling. Was it a dream? The silence pressed close, broken only by her uneven breathing. Then a sound, the faint trickle of water, inside her hut. She froze, eyes darting to the floor. There, in the corner, a thin stream of water seeped through the cracks, curling like a living thing. Her heart pounded. The water pooled, shimmered, and then rose, shaping itself once again into the figure she had seen by the river. He stood tall in the cramped hut, his form almost too large for the space, his glow dim but steady. Amina pressed her hand to her mouth, afraid her scream would wake the whole village, but no sound came. The god watched her, his expression unreadable. "You brought me here," he said softly. She shook her head again, her body pressed tighter against the wall. "I swear I did not mean to." He stepped closer, the faint scent of rain filling the room. "You sang. The river carries truth. What you asked for, I have come to give." Her knees weakened, and she slid down the wall, sitting on the packed earth floor. "What did I ask for?" she whispered. The god knelt before her, his face inches from hers. "You asked not with words, but with your heart." She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "I only wanted to feel less alone." The god's eyes glowed brighter, as though her words pleased him. "Then I am yours." The air seemed to thicken, her chest heavy with the weight of his presence. Amina closed her eyes, trying to steady her breath. When she opened them again, he was gone. Only silence remained, the corner of the hut dry, as if nothing had happened, but her heart knew better. That night, she did not sleep. Each creak of the hut, each whisper of wind through the cracks, felt like his return. The hours stretched, heavy and long. At dawn, when the first rooster crowed, she stepped outside. The village stirred slowly, smoke rising from the first fires of the day. Children ran barefoot between huts, their laughter chasing away the night's shadow. Amina froze when she heard her name whispered through the night. The voice was neither loud nor harsh, but it reached her bones like the sound of rushing water beneath stone. She sat upright on her mat, the thin blanket falling from her shoulders. The moonlight spilled faintly through the cracks of her hut, silvering the earth floor. Her heart pounded, each beat heavy in her chest. She waited, holding her breath. The voice came again. Amina. Her lips parted, but no words came. The sound was outside her hut, low and deep, as if carried by the river itself. She pressed her hand to her mouth, afraid to answer. The night grew thick, the air damp. Then came the sound of dripping, slow and steady, as though the roof itself had begun to weep. Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream for her neighbors, but something inside her warned against it. The village would not hear what she heard. The river god had chosen her alone. Slowly, she pushed herself to her feet. Her knees shook as she stepped to the door, her hand hovering over the woven mat that served as its cover. She hesitated, and then, as if by its own will, the mat lifted slightly, moved by a breeze that did not exist. She saw him, standing just beyond the doorway, his form a shifting shimmer, half man and half water, droplets falling from his shoulders like jewels. His eyes glowed pale in the moonlight. He did not step inside, but he did not need to. His presence filled her hut. Amina clutched her arms around herself, trembling. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. The god tilted his head. "What you called for." "I called for nothing," she insisted, her voice breaking. "I only sang." "Songs are not nothing," he said, the water at his feet rippling outward though the earth was dry. "They are doors, and you have opened one." Her breath hitched, her chest tight, the silence stretched, broken only by the drip of water pooling at the doorway. Finally, the god lifted his hand, droplets cascading from his fingers. "Walk with me," he said. Her stomach knotted. Fear surged through her veins, yet beneath it lay something else, something that pulled at her. A strange curiosity, a tether she could not break. Amina shook her head. "I cannot. If I leave now, the village will see." The god's lips curved faintly, that almost smile again. "They will see nothing. They cannot." The words carried weight, final and certain. Her body moved before her mind agreed, her feet carrying her to the doorway. The air around him was cool, mist brushing her skin. She stepped outside, the night swallowing her. The god turned, gliding more than walking, leading her toward the path beyond the huts. The village was still, the dogs asleep, no eyes opening to watch them. Amina's pulse thundered in her ears as they walked toward the edge of the forest. The deeper they went, the thicker the mist became, curling between the trees like pale smoke. And then, suddenly, the river was before them again. Its surface shimmered with moonlight, though the sky above was veiled in cloud. The god stopped at the bank, the water bending upward to touch his feet like loyal servants. He turned to her, his gaze steady. "This place is truth," he said. "Here, no lies can live." Amina wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "Why me?" "Because you called," he answered simply. "Because your voice reached me. Few can sing with such longing. Fewer still can awaken me." Her chest ached with fear and confusion. She wanted to turn and run, but her body would not obey. The god reached out, his hand hovering just above her cheek. Drops of water fell from his fingers, cool against her skin. "You are not alone," he whispered. Her knees weakened, and she sank onto the grass, her breath shallow. The night seemed to lean closer, every sound of the forest silenced. Amina closed her eyes, fighting tears. But when she opened them again, she saw shapes in the water, faces, dozens of them, men, women, children, their features blurred but visible, rising just beneath the surface. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their mouths moved as though whispering. Amina gasped and stumbled backward. What are they? The god's voice deepened, rolling like thunder over distant hills. They are mine, those who have sung, those who have called, those who belong to the river. Her blood turned cold. She shook her head violently. No, I do not belong to you. The faces beneath the surface rippled, their whispers growing louder, though she could not understand their words. The god's gaze did not waver. You will. Amina scrambled to her feet, her breaths coming quick and sharp. Her heart screamed for escape, for the safety of her village. But her feet were heavy, the air thick, her body trapped in the pull of something larger than herself. The god stepped closer, and the river surged at his command. The water reached toward her ankles, curling like vines. Amina sat trembling in the darkness of her hut, the whisper of her name still clinging to the air. The sound of dripping water grew louder, though no rain touched the village. She pressed her palms to her ears, desperate to block it out, but the voice slipped through, soft and endless. You cannot run from the river. Her heart pounded, tears spilling down her cheeks. She thought of her mother's old songs, of her childhood laughter, of nights when the world had felt safe and small. Now everything seemed stretched, strange, as if her life no longer belonged to her. The floor beneath her dampened, water seeping up from the earth. It crawled toward her like living fingers, cold against her skin. She scrambled to her feet, clutching the doorframe. No, she whispered. No more. Her voice cracked, but she spoke again, louder this time. Leave me. The hut quivered, the walls groaning as if the river itself pressed against them. And then silence, a silence so deep it rang in her ears. Amina's breath trembled as she slowly lowered her hands. The dripping had stopped. The floor was dry. Her body sagged with relief, but the fear still clung, heavy and bitter. She sank onto her mat, exhaustion pulling at her bones. At last, sleep came. When she woke, the sun was already high, golden light filling her hut. The sounds of the village drifted in, voices, laughter, the pounding of pestles against grain. For a moment, she almost believed it had been a dream. But when she stepped outside, she saw it. At the edge of her hut, in the dust, a faint trail of wet footprints. They led away toward the forest. Her stomach knotted, but she forced herself to walk. She followed the prints past the huts, past the well, past the village square. Nobody else seemed to see them. She alone carried this burden. At last, the trail ended at the riverbank. The water shone under the sun, calm and beautiful. Too calm. Amina's throat tightened. She stepped closer, her reflection trembling on the surface. And then the river stirred. The water rose, forming the figure she dreaded and longed for. The god stood before her again, his body gleaming like liquid light, his gaze endless. Amina, he said, his voice low, steady, you cannot deny what you have opened. She clenched her fists, her body shaking. I did not ask for you. You did, he answered, in your song, in your loneliness. You called me, and I came. The river rippled, faces rising once more beneath its skin. They whispered, their voices like wind through reeds. Her heart twisted, fear warring with pity. What happens if I refuse you? She asked, her voice raw. The god's expression did not change. Refuse, and the river will take what it has given. Your song will turn to silence, and the silence will be forever. Her breath caught. Forever. The faces beneath the water seemed to lean closer, their eyes pleading. Her heart raced, torn between terror and the weight of something larger than herself. The god extended his hand, droplets falling like jewels back into the river. Choose, he said. Amina stared at him, then at the faces below, then at her own reflection trembling on the surface. Her hands shook. She thought of the village, of her people who could never understand, who would never hear the voices she heard. She thought of nights spent alone, her heart aching, her songs unanswered, and she thought of the river, eternal and waiting. Her tears spilled freely as she lifted her hand. Slowly, trembling, she placed it in his. The water god's grip was cool, firm, unyielding. The river surged upward, swallowing the sound of the world. The faces beneath the water brightened, their whispers rising into song. The current wrapped around her body, pulling her gently, carrying her forward. The god's voice echoed inside her chest, not just in her ears. "You will never be alone again." Amina's scream caught in her throat, but no sound came. The water closed over her. The river swallowed her whole, and when the surface calmed, only silence remained. The footprints at the bank faded. The sun shone on, the village alive with laughter, unaware. But deep beneath the water, a new voice joined the chorus of the forgotten. Amina had become part of the river's song,